All right, let's talk about something that's pretty much a nightmare for any homeowner: water damage. You know, the chaos of a pipe bursting in the middle of the night, or that sinking feeling when you see a storm surge coming. But believe it or not, there's a really scientific way to bring a home back from the brink. And today, we're going to dive into exactly how that works.
It's a simple question, right? But the answer? Oh, it's messy. Water is literally the lifeblood of our homes, but the second it gets out of its pipes and fixtures, it just becomes incredibly destructive, and every single minute counts.
And, the crazy part is where this stuff comes from. The culprits are often hiding in plain sight. We're talking about that washing machine hose that just gives up one day, the water heater that fails with zero warning, or even a backed-up sewer line. These aren't some rare, out-there events. This is the everyday stuff that can suddenly flip your world upside down.
So, to make sense of all this, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the immediate attack and the different kinds of water threats. Then, we'll get into the surprising science behind getting things properly dry. After that, the step-by-step playbook the professionals use. And finally, the big one: insurance and, who pays for all this.
Okay, so let's start right at that moment disaster strikes. A water emergency, it's not just a mess to clean up, it's a full-on attack on your home structure and even your safety.
And the thing is, this threat is constant because it's driven by forces all around us. If you live somewhere with high humidity, or in an older home with aging plumbing, or your house is in a low-lying area, well, the risk is just so much higher. All those factors create a kind of perfect storm where water is basically always looking for a way in.
Now, this is super important. You might think water is water, right? Well, not to the pros. They have 3 categories. Category 1 is clean water, like from a broken water pipe. Category 2 is gray water. Think dishwater overflow, with soaps and food bits in it. And then there's Category 3, black water. This is the really nasty stuff, grossly contaminated with bacteria, like sewage or floodwater. And which category you have dictates literally everything about the cleanup. Here's another key thing people mix up: mitigation versus restoration. Think of mitigation as the emergency first responder. Their job is to stop the bleeding, turn off the water, pull out all the standing water, and stop mold before it starts. It is all about damage control. Restoration, that's what comes next. That's the full-scale repair and rebuilding to get your property back to exactly how it was before the disaster. So once the emergency is under control, the next phase isn't just cleaning up. It's a scientific race against the clock. And that brings us to the science of drying. Okay, I want you to remember this number: 24 to 48 hours. In a humid place, that's the window you have before mold can really start to grow on wet materials. After that 48-hour mark, the problem gets so much worse. It goes from just a water problem to a major potential health hazard.
And this is exactly why the pros don't guess. They use something called psychrometry. It's a fancy word, I know, but it's the actual science of how air, temperature, and moisture all relate to each other. They do real calculations to figure out exactly where to put every fan and dehumidifier to create the perfect drying environment. It's physics, not just hoping for the best.
And the gear they use to do this? Whoa. This is not your weekend DIY setup. We're talking about massive, truck-mounted pumps that can pull out thousands of gallons of water an hour, giant commercial dehumidifiers, and high-velocity air movers. But honestly, the real game changers are the moisture meters and thermal imaging cameras. These things can literally see water that's trapped inside your walls or under the floorboards, stuff that's totally invisible to the naked eye.
Okay, so you have the science, you have the technology. How does it all fit together into a process? This is the professional playbook for taking a home from total chaos back to calm.
It really boils down to a clear 3-phase system. Phase 1 is that emergency response. Get all the standing water out and tear out anything that's just too soaked to be saved. Phase 2 is that scientific drying we talked about, where they set up all the equipment and check the moisture levels every single day. And only when the structure is verifiably scientifically dry do they move on to Phase 3, the actual restoration and rebuilding. So you'll probably hear professionals talk about being IICRC certified. This is basically the gold standard. It comes from the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. It means the techs on your property actually understand the science, the psychrometry, the contamination rules, the drying principles. It's the difference between hiring a real expert and just, a person with a fan.
And how do they know when something's truly dry? They measure it. See, dry isn't a feeling, it's a number. They use these moisture meters to make sure every material, from the wood framing to the drywall, hits a very specific moisture content goal. This is what prevents hidden mold and structural issues from popping up way down the line.
And this brings us to the final, and
Let's be honest, often the most stressful part of this whole ordeal, figuring out the insurance and the costs.
It is the question on every single property owner's mind from the second they see the water rising. So, who foots the bill for all this work?
Well, as a general rule, your standard homeowner's insurance will cover sudden and accidental damage, like that burst pipe or faulty appliance. What it almost always excludes is flood damage from rising groundwater or a big storm. For that, you need a totally separate flood insurance policy. It also probably won't cover gradual damage from a slow leak you didn't fix, and there might be some pretty strict limits on mold coverage too.
And this is exactly why working with a professional restoration company is so critical. They are specialists when it comes to insurance claims. They document every single step with photos, super detailed reports, and all those scientific moisture readings. They basically speak the same language as the insurance adjuster, and they provide the exact proof needed to get your claim processed smoothly, which is a massive relief when you're already stressed out.
So, as we wrap up here, it really leaves us with one last big question. Understanding this whole process is one thing, but knowing your own risks, checking your insurance policy, and actually having a plan, that's what transforms that moment of chaos into a calm, controlled recovery. So, is your property prepared?